Hi everyone, welcome back to the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Robert K. Sarkos is my name. Thank you to all our new subscribers. Thank you to our usual suspects that keep abreast with all the content that we do share. I do appreciate all the time and effort that you put in to watch our content. If you're new, do not forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share. Anyways, today we will be speaking all matters Manchester United, and for those of you that have watched and for those of you that have not yet watched, prior to the start of the season, I made a call on my predictions in regards to who will lift the Premier League title, what team will finish where, and what teams will be relegated. If you've not yet caught up on that video, do check it out on the channel. I'm sure it's pinned somewhere there on the homepage. But anyways, looking at the broader context of things, here are my reasons as to why I think that Manchester United will finish in 4th place or in the top 4, or perhaps will be among the 5 teams that will be competing for that top 4 slot. Of course, last season we all saw their struggles with the injuries, issues in the dressing room. We all remember that incident between the manager in Erik ten Hag and Jadon Sancho and all those things. But anyways, it's a new season. There seems to be a bit of calm. There seems to be Old Trafford and Carrington seem to be oozing with a lot of order, calmness, and a movement with assuredness or with surety that things are going now in the right direction, especially ever since Jim Ratcliffe and his Ineos side took the mantle of managing Manchester United when he purchased a 25% stake in the Red Devils. I do think they have a pretty decent squad overall. There are some missing pieces in areas where they can do better. Definitely, you can never be too good to not want any additions unless you're Manchester City. So if you're not that, then obviously here and there you could want some additions. And that is why Manchester United are still pushing to sign Manuel Ugarte from PSG, the Uruguayan international there. A holding midfielder who some have gone ahead to compare him to a young version of Javier Mascherano, the former, West Ham and Liverpool midfielder who also featured a great deal for Barcelona. Anyways, let's look at the squad. First of all, I want to look at what my best starting 11 would be for this Manchester United for them to be able to compete favorably. They do have 3 goalkeepers in their squad, but of course it is a given that Andre Onana is the #1 choice in that goalkeeping position, but also he's the best goalkeeper they have in any case. Then in number 2, I'm going with Diogo Dalot ahead of Mazraoui. Yes, they've just signed this one from Bayern Munich, but I do think Diogo Dalot offers a lot, especially when Manchester United are going forward. That final ball, usually it's not so pretty. He can do better, but so far it's decent enough, and he can also strike that ball very well to give you, if he gets it on the target, maybe you can get a rebound and something of that note. So I do think he's the best player they have for a right back. In left back, I'll go with Luke Shaw, but the fact that he's injured at the moment, that is where we can tweak things a bit, but Luke Shaw would be their best or ideal left back. But in his absentia, of course, I'm not sure how Tyler Malacia has progressed in regards to his total recovery from that long injury that kept him out for the whole of last season. And then we also know that should all those 2 be on the sidelines, we can always shift Diogo Dalot to go and play at left back, and then we have Mazraoui play at right back. So when you look at that kind of picture, I do think that's a decent start, but line up enough. But I do think Diogo Dalot on the right and Luke Shaw on the left will be decent left backs and right backs for Manchester United. Let's go to the central. Here, of course, the first name on the list is Lisandro Martinez. Last season, he did struggle with injuries here and there, including that foot injury that cost him a good chunk of games that he missed out last season. But there is no doubt that Lisandro Martinez is the best defender Manchester United have. It goes without saying that they have lost Rafael Varane. No pun intended. I don't think they will miss him anyway. So Lisandro Martinez there, but who do we partner him with? We all know they've signed a youngster in Leny Yoro, 18 years of age. Real Madrid wanted to sign him, but Manchester United eventually beat them to the punchline and landed his services. However, he suffered an injury during the preseason in the USA tour, in that game between Manchester United and Arsenal, and has since been sidelined for 3 months. But by that, still he wouldn't have been in my starting 11. So I'm going with Lisandro Martinez and Matthias de Ligt. Now, de Ligt is also a new addition from FC Bayern Munich to this Manchester United side, but he's a player that has played for Ajax in the UEFA Champions League. He's played for Juventus at the highest level, and he has done it for FC Bayern Munich. Now, of course, we all know that English football is a bit different. It's a bit physical, sometimes, a bit technical and all that. But I do think a player of his age, 25 years of age, has garnered enough experience to slot into this Manchester United side, who, in case of his absence, they will be looking to Harry Maguire, Johnny Evans, all players who are aging, but we've all seen Harry Maguire's form in recent times hasn't been the best, although last season he did quite some improvement in there. So it would be Lisandro Martinez alongside Matthias de Ligt for me. One is right-footed, the other is almost double-footed in Lisandro Martinez. So that would be my backline for this Manchester United. Then we move on to the crucial part of this midfield. Now, this one was a hard one to call, especially in that deep lying role, the holding midfield role. Now, of course, we all know in modern football that role has changed a bit, although not too much, but that role has shifted to being a complete midfielder. You can go forward, you can stay in that deep end of the midfield, you can drift a bit back to help the center backs when the two fullbacks have moved forward, and then you sort of create a triple defending sort of, a form there, so that you have that, you give enough shield should your side be caught on the counter attack and that kind of thing. Now, it is because you have these kinds of debates that United are going forward to want to sign Manuel Ugarte, who they think would help them to be less vulnerable, especially on the counterattacks. But anyway, even with his absence, here is what I chose to go with in my midfield. Number one there is Kobbie Mainoo. I'm going with Kobbie Mainoo, still a youngster, but he has shown the capacity that of playing at the top level. He's industrious, very hardworking, very athletic, very mobile, and his understanding of the game is quite mature, and that's how he secured even a call to the national team, and he did play some football at the recently concluded Euros that were won by Spain in Germany. So clearly he is going in our midfield. Who is he going to play alongside? I'm going to play him alongside Captain Bruno Fernandes. Now, of course, I would have loved to play Bruno Fernandes in a more advanced role, but he's the captain. I want him to take more responsibility. I want him to take on the role of being a box-to-box kind of player, help with the press once they lose the ball, help with the defensive work, but also help in progressing that ball. We all know he has that good long-range pass that he can play. He also has the short passes. He has the game intelligence overall to, maneuver through any side. Besides, he's also recently renewed his contract to extend his stay at Old Trafford. So I'm playing him in that number 8 role, or the box-to-box midfield role. And who am I adding him with? The final midfielder I'm calling onto the starting lineup is Mason Mount. Bought expensively last summer, but did suffer a good number of injuries that kept him out for the better part of the season. But again, this was one of the star players that Chelsea had prior to his exit, and he's proven to us that he's capable. At Manchester United, we've hardly seen that side of him, but let's give him a chance and have him in that standing in front of that double midfield of Kobbie Mainoo and Bruno Fernandes, to be the one playing behind the striker. in what would be like a hybrid of a number 10 role in that case. So I do think he's capable, very athletic. He has the game intelligence, not as sharp as Bruno Fernandes, but he does have it. He has a good eye for goal, so that really, for me, gives him the advantage to put him in that slot. And then let's go for the left and the right wings and the striker. As far as those two are concerned, I'm going this one. Best. This one is extremely subjective. For example, I'm going to go with Amadou Diallo. Why? Still a youngster, signed from Atlanta. Of course, he's had his struggles with injuries, but every time he has stepped on the turf, he's shown flashes of brilliance. Now, I'm putting him ahead of Marcus Rashford, and the reason as why I say it is very subjective is, again, it will depend on how you look at the argument or how you want to make a case for who. Because for me, last season, Marcus Rashford, he didn't show up. He just didn't show up. Probably he had a lot of personal struggles in his life that cost him, performances on the pitch and all that. He's a very good player. We all know what he's capable of doing. He showed that to us in Erik ten Hag's first season at Old Trafford. So we really know what he's capable of, and that's why he's attracted interest from the likes of PSG and Arsenal, although neither side have solidified that interest to make bids for the England international. But we also saw that he wasn't called to the England national team because he had not been on form last season. And that's why I'm choosing to give Amadou Diallo a chance. He returned at the tail end of last season, and we saw those flashes of brilliance in him. So I'm giving him the nod to go ahead and start on this starting lineup. And then on the other side, I'm going to go with Alejandro Garnacho. Still a young player, but he's also shown to us that he is capable of an acceptable level of consistency to try and dictate games. His pace is quite something admirable. It kind of reminds you of the vintage Manchester United that played by the wings and had that pace. Although he's not your typical wing of running by the sidelines and then try to float in a ball. He's more of the modern winger who wants to cut back on the inside and try to take a shot at goal or play that final pass to the striker. But at least for me, I do appreciate him well enough to have him in my starting 11. Again, if you disagree with these views, do let me know down in the comment section. And then to lead the attack as the number one striker, I'm going with Rasmus Højlund. Signed last summer for £72 million from Atlanta. We did see that he's decent enough to start for this Manchester United. Can they do better in terms of strikers? Maybe or maybe not. Why? Because the market for strikers is not as broad as it used to be. When you look at the top 5 strikers that a team like Manchester United would try to sign, especially having missed out on Harry Kane last summer, there's not quite too many on that list. So again, looking back at the kind of Manchester United, the strikers they've had over the years, Robin van Persie, who they signed from Arsenal, Wayne Rooney, who they did sign from Everton, Ruud van Nistelrooy. When you go back in as far back as that, so for me, he's not yet in the caliber of those traditional Manchester United strikers that we've come to know. But given the chance, given the consistency, I think he has the potential to deliver. Last season, he did deliver to some extent, although not to what you would have ideally wanted him to deliver on. But for me, largely because Manchester United weren't creating enough chances. And that's why I'm thinking that when you have that midfield of Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount, then you have Garnacho and Amadou Diallo, these are players that are capable of creating chances for him to get on the end of and score some really decent goals for this Manchester United side. Does it put a bit of pressure on his shoulders? Definitely does. Any player that wears that red jersey got to feel some level of pressure on their shoulders, because Manchester United is arguably the most successful Premier League club there is in the Premier League. So that's not even up for debate. So anyways, that would be my ideal starting 11 for Manchester United this season, and I do think it's strong enough. So again, when we look at the backups for this starting 11, who are the backups? In goal, there's Tom Heaton. decent goalkeeper, but of course, Onana will take the large chunk of the playing time as far as that number one role is concerned. And then when we come to the defenders, like I did say, you have Mazraoui signed from AFC Bayern Munich. You do have Tyler Malacia bound to return from injury. You do have Johnny Evans. You do have Harry Maguire. You do have Lenioro, although currently injured, but I do think these provide enough defensive cover should Manchester United want to call upon them every once in a while, or when a game is needs to get to be gotten over the line. You're leading 1-0, you're leading 2-1, you're in the 80th minute, and you need to throw on a defender or two to help hold that shield and see the game out. I think these are players that you can really look on to get the job done. When we move to midfield, you have the experience of Casemiro. Of course, he's had his struggles here and there, so many red cards. I do think he suffered. He's sometimes been clumsy in the way he has applied himself, but also that is because he had sort of been left as the lone wolf to try and grind out in that Manchester United midfield. So he was left vulnerable in a way, but I do think he's a very, very decent cover. Play Kobe Mino for 60, 65 minutes or even 70, and then throw on Casemiro to help you hold foot in case you need to tweak a thing or two, or in case you need fresh energy in that midfield. And then you do have a Scott McTominay. Now, this is a player that is being quoted by the likes of Fulham, the likes of West Ham. They've all expressed a certain level of interest in the player, with Fulham making bids, but that were not satisfactory to the valuation of Manchester United. So, a decent Scottish international who is capable of scoring goals. He did score, I think, 7 goals last season and provided 1 assist. Arguably his best season in a Manchester United jersey as far as being an individual player goes. So clearly he would be decent cover for that midfield, for that Bruno Fernandes kind of position that we are looking at. And then for the position of Mason Mount, you still have Christian Eriksen. Of course, he's far from his best that we used to know, the Christian Eriksen that we did watch at Tottenham Hotspurs, the one we did watch at Inter Milan before suffering that, heart attack during the Euros of Euro 2020 that was played in 2021. So really, sincerely speaking, the Danish international is in the evening of his career, but he's still a player that you can call on to deliver a moment of brilliancy, especially if you're calling him as a backup player. And that's how I do look at it. Then on the side of Amadou Diallo, like I did mention, you have a Marcus Rashford, for whom I know many would argue, let him start ahead of, Amadou Diallo and all that kind of thing, but I do think he is a decent backup there in that squad. Then the lead striker, of course, you do have a Joshua Zirkzee, who came off the bench to score Manchester United's only goal against Fulham that won them all 3 points. I do not need to make a case for the new signing there from Bologna. And then we move on to the other side, where you have Alejandro Garnacho. You do have Antony, you do have a Jadon Sancho. And now, eventually, Jadon Sancho could leave. That is still a very huge possibility. There's interest from Juventus, there's interest from PSG. So, but should he not leave, of course, he's available to provide support on that side of the pitch. Antony is a player that I do not think he divides opinion in any way. He has underperformed in terms of the player that was promised to the fans, looking at the amount of money that was, paid to buy him and all that kind of thing. But I do think as a backup player, he's quite good, that you can rely on him in a few games. You can't rely on him all games, because sometimes he comes on and he feels as if he's playing for himself and not for the team. In some cases, that's how I view it. So overall, that's the kind of squad that United really needs to fight for that top 4 place. And then, of course, there are other players like Ethan Whitley, there's Palasteri, there's Handball Mejbri, and then, so clearly, these are all players. These are youngsters, of course, but once in a while can be called upon to slot in, especially when you're having cup competitions like the Carabao Cup, like the FA Cup, at the early stages when you're playing, smaller teams from the League One, from, maybe even the Nations, league kind of thing down there. So, anyways, that's the kind of picture in which I see Manchester United in going into this season. But then the other key important ingredient, of course, is the manager in Erik ten Hag. He's had to, switch things up in his coaching staff. We've seen the introduction of Manchester United legend in Ruud van Nistelrooy coming into the technical bench. Of course, we've seen the departure of Steve McLaren, was going to be the new, head coach for the Jamaican international team and all that. But again, all that shake-up shows you the kind of direction that Manchester United are trying to take. Yes, Erik ten Hag will be under pressure because he knows that should he be unconvincing this season, Sir Jim Ratcliffe and his colleagues will not hesitate in letting him go and have him replaced. So that bit of pressure, I do think, will push him to try and get Manchester United back into the UEFA Champions League and perhaps even get a piece of silverware. Remember, they will be competing in the Europa League, so I do think they really have decent chances there. And if you're Manchester United, you'll be gunning for that, continental trophy. Otherwise, that's my view of this Manchester United side and why I think they will compete favorably for that top 4 slot. Let me know if you agree or disagree. Leave down a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, allow me leave it here for now, and I'll see you next time. Stay blessed and have a wonderful rest of the week.